Lewis and Clark exploring Montana's heartland. Every time I walk up to a Lewis and Clark sign along the trail, I feel like I'm stepping into a page of history, one written right where I'm standing. These signs are the voice of the land, the echoes of the expedition. When I read them, I'm not just learning, I'm seeing, smelling, and feeling what they went through. That's why I'm sharing these full-page images in my slide deck. Each one marks the spot where I paused, looked around, and imagined the struggle. Today is going to be a big day on the Lewis and Clark Trail. I'll begin in Fort Benton, grabbing a coffee to go from the beloved Wake Up Coffee House, a local favorite that fuels early risers and trailblazers alike. With the history of each stop today, I'm going to put each stop into a chapter, and it's shaping up to be a legendary ride. Here's a quick outline for your 6-chapter Lewis and Clark Trail series, each one capturing a decisive moment from the journey. Lewis and Clark Trail, a journey in 6 chapters in one day on the Missouri River in Montana. The Portage Route of Perseverance. The Gates of the Mountains. Golden Government in Helena, where rivers begin in 3 forks. The richest hill on earth in Butte. The Copper King's Castle. First, I'll head to the Lewis and Clark Portage Route around the Great Falls of the Missouri, starting near the mouth of Belt Creek. This is where the Corps of Discovery faced one of their most grueling physical challenges, hauling boats and supplies across nearly 18 miles of rugged terrain in 12 days. After retracing that historic path, I'll drive south to the Gates of the Mountains, where sheer limestone cliffs rise dramatically from the Missouri River. It was here that Meriwether Lewis marveled at the natural grandeur and gave the site its poetic name. After spending time on the boat, I'll arrive in Helena, Montana's state capital, where echoes of the gold rush still linger in Last Chance Gulch, and the stately Capitol building stands as a monument to ambition and resilience. Then it's on to 3 Forks, where the Jefferson, Madison, and Gallatin rivers converge to form the source of the mighty Missouri. This confluence marks both the symbolic end of the river's origin and a pivotal moment in the expedition's journey westward by land. I'll end the day in Butte, once known as the richest hill on earth. There, I'll spend the night in the opulent mansion of William A. Clark, the Copper King, no relation to my William Clark of the expedition, but a titan of a different American frontier. His home, a gilded relic of wealth and ambition, offers the perfect place to reflect on a day steeped in exploration, endurance, and the spirit of discovery. Lewis and Clark Portage Route. Today, as I depart Fort Benton, it's going to be a big day on the Lewis and Clark Trail. First, I'm driving the back road on the east side of the Missouri River to Belt Creek, where I'll begin taking the Lewis and Clark Portage route around the Great Falls of the Missouri, starting near the mouth of Belt Creek. This sign, which is a silhouette of Lewis and Clark looking out over the frontier, always gave me confidence that I was on the right path. It's not just a trail marker, it's a signal that you're tapping into something timeless, a journey that shaped the country, and one that I'm now walking or driving in my own way. It's like the land whispering, "You're still heading west. Keep going." The Lewis and Clark Portage route around the Great Falls of the Missouri began near the mouth of Belt Creek, about 1 mile below present-day Maroney Dam, just northeast of Great Falls, Montana. The portage began on June 22, 1805, after Clark had surveyed and staked out the route between June 17th. The lower portage camp was set up near the confluence of Belt Creek and the Missouri River. Being here at the very start of that climb made it all feel real. It's one thing to read about it, but standing on the same ground, you feel the weight of what they did. The portage of perseverance around the Great Falls, where grit met geography. The Corps faced their most rigid physical challenge, hauling boats and gear across 18 miles of rugged terrain. The Portage Challenge. In June 1805, Lewis and Clark faced a massive obstacle, 5 waterfalls over a 12-mile stretch of the Missouri River. To get around them, they had to carry all their boats, supplies, and gear overland for 18 miles across rugged terrain. To avoid the series of waterfalls along the Missouri River north of this point, the expedition portaged their canoes and several tons of baggage crossing the highway right here at the lower camp. Some 12 miles northeast, the crew made crude wagons, the wheels sliced off a cottonwood tree. The upper camp, named after the bears which inhabited the island, was located 5 miles away southwest. The portage was near man-killing. "The man has to haul with all their strengths," Clark wrote. Lewis and Clark started here, dragging boats and supplies up from the river bottom. Looking at the bluffs rising ahead, I could see why it took them over a month to get through. The land is beautiful, but it's not gentle. I imagine the men sweating in the heat, dodging cactus and pushing forward 1 mile at a time. As I drive up the bluffs near what's now Portage Creek, I imagine the exact route the Lewis and Clark expedition took more than 200 years ago. The land rises steeply from the river bottom, cutting through ravines and winding up over the bluffs. It's hot, the wind is steady, and the dust swirls across the road like it's remembering. This is where they climbed, pulled, and pushed their heavy canoes and supplies, step by brutal step. No fancy gear, no roads, just grit, muscle, and hope. I can almost picture their worn moccasins sinking into the dry soil, the sound of wagon wheels creaking, and the voices calling to each other through the wind. Driving it now, with air conditioning and a good engine, the climb feels easy, but the echoes of their struggle still hang in the air. It's humbling to follow their path and imagine the sweat, pain, and determination it took to conquer this stretch. The 18-mile portage took 31 days. Two portions of the route, which have largely escaped development, are part of a National Historic Landmark District designated in 1966 to commemorate this achievement. As I drove through the back roads of the Portage Route, I kept looking out all the windows, scanning the open landscape. I pulled over, got out, and stepped into the wind. It was strong, the kind that almost knocks you over. The air smelled earthy and dry, like time hadn't moved far from 1805. It hit me. This was the exact kind of ground the expedition fought through, pushing boats, gear, and hope up these bluffs. They made the land part of their story. Now, I'm walking right into that same chapter. I've reached the upper camp, the end of the Portage Route. The land remains undeveloped, just as it was in 1805. As I come to the end of the Portage Route near the upper camp, the land is still untouched, just expansive grasslands, brush, and sky. There's no pavement, no buildings, no crowds, just wind, silence, and the same terrain the expedition fought through. Lewis wrote, "Yet no one complains. All go on with cheerfulness." And that stuck with me. It's hard to believe how tough these folks were. At the edge of the upper camp, I found a stone with a simple, weathered, and quietly dignified plaque. This marks the end of the Portage Route, where Lewis and Clark finally rested. William Clark surveyed and staked out an 18-mile portage route between June 17th and 20th, 1805. He broke it into 6 courses totaling 17¾ miles plus 46 poles. He used a circumferentor, surveyor's compass, spirit levels, and a 2-pole chain to measure angles and distances. His sketches were later refined into formal maps. Clark's maps included ravines, creeks, ridges, and landmarks, such as the White Bear Islands and Flattery Run. He even noted deceptive terrain, such as backwater creeks that didn't flow, which he called Flattery. He nearly fell into the river while measuring the Great Falls, and still managed to record its height as 87 feet and 3/4 inch using spirit levels. Clark's map wasn't just a technical feat, it was a survival tool. It guided the Corps through one of its most challenging stretches and helped future travelers retrace their steps. As I walked into the upper camp, the ground remained true to its past, covered with prickly pear cacti that still grew thick and low. I had to watch every step, not just for cactus thorns, but for rattlesnakes hiding in the brush. This is where the Corps of Discovery rested after crossing 18 brutal miles 4 times over. They spent a week nearby, licking their wounds, mending clothes, and writing in journals. On July 4th, they celebrated the nation's birthday with whatever they had left. No parades, no fireworks, just survival and a chance to recover. Lewis wrote, "Yet no one complains. All go on with cheerfulness." And that stuck with me. It's hard to believe how tough these folks were. As I stepped into upper camp, the wind wasn't the only thing keeping me alert. This place once swarmed with grizzly bears when the expedition camped nearby. Lewis wrote about them, prominent and fearless, roaming the bluffs and riverbanks. I was in grizzly territory, which was a different experience. I imagined seamen barking through the night, sentries taking shifts, rifles always ready. By the time I reached upper camp, a few weathered signs stood here, quietly telling the story of struggle, survival, and rest. I decided not to narrate over them. These posters speak louder than I ever could. Let the words, the quotes, and the silence between them tell you what happened here. The Corps of Discovery first heard of grizzlies from the Mandan tribe in 1804, who described them as monstrous and dangerous, requiring war party tactics to hunt. Lewis and Clark were stunned by the bear's size, strength, and resilience. Some took 10 shots to bring down, and even then, they swam across rivers before dying. They often referred to them as white bears, likely due to the silver-tipped fur that gave them a pale appearance. Grizzly bears have a long and dramatic history in North America. Native American tribes revered grizzlies as symbols of strength and spiritual power. Bear claw necklaces were worn for protection and never traded, only gifted. In 1975, they were listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, with recovery efforts focusing on ecosystems such as Yellowstone and the Northern Continental Divide. The journey from the Portage Route to the Gates of the Mountains feels like stepping from endurance into awe. The Gates of the Mountains, Lewis himself described them as the most remarkable cliffs we have yet seen. You're about to glide through a place where the Missouri slices between towering limestone walls and where mystery and legend still hang in the air.